Okay, so AI, right. Everyone's talking about it, but it feels like everyone's stuck on these like chat bots,
Yeah.
which are cool, don't get me wrong. But there's this whole other, I don't know, dimension to AI that I think is just starting to really heat up, and that's spatial intelligence.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's interesting, right? Because we tend to think of AI in terms of language,
Totally.
but the physical world that we actually, move through and live in and like knock into things, that's three-dimensional, and that's really the realm of spatial intelligence.
And that's what we're going to be diving into today. We're going to be talking to Fei-Fei Li, who you might know.
Yeah.
She's done some really incredible work in AI.
Yeah, she's a big deal.
Yeah, she and Justin Johnson, they founded this company called World Labs, and they sat down with the team over A16s. And the title of the video, I love it, is "The Future of AI is Here." And they talk about this whole idea of spatial intelligence. So to start us off...
So Fei-Fei Li, she's been a real leader in the AI world for quite a while. And a few years back, she was super instrumental in creating this thing called ImageNet.
Oh, yeah, ImageNet was huge.
It was huge. It was this massive data set of like labeled images.
Like a ton of them, right?
Yeah, millions of images, all labeled, and it completely changed how computers, can see, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big deal, and she actually talks about this, it was really just a stepping stone. Image recognition is cool, but it's still just 2D.
Right.
Spatial intelligence is about understanding the world the way that we experience it.
Exactly.
And its full 3D, messiness.
It's like moving from, looking at a photograph to actually being in the scene of the photograph.
Yeah.
And Lee, she talks about being driven by these, she calls them North Stars, these big aspirational goals.
I love that.
That guides her research. And for a while, it was this idea of teaching machines to understand the stories within images, not just to label objects, but to understand the relationships, the actions, the emotions.
So like beyond just, oh, there's a dog in this picture, it's like, oh, the dog is playing sex with a child.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? They did it. Look at how AI can now generate captions for your photos that are actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Or even write entire stories based on an image.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's crazy.
But then she realized there was this even bigger, even more fundamental challenge ahead, and that was spatial intelligence. Because to truly understand the world, you can't just look at it as a series of static images. You have to understand how things exist and interact in 3 dimensions.
Right. So how is that different from like what we see with ChatGPT? I mean, those language models, they feel really intelligent.
Oh, they are, for sure. But they're good at what they're good at, which is processing language, and language is linear.
Oh.
One word after the next, forming sentences, paragraphs, stories.
Like reading a book.
Exactly. It's a one-dimensional way of thinking.
Interesting.
But the real world doesn't work that way.
Right. Definitely not.
Spatial intelligence, that requires a totally different kind of understanding. One that includes things like depth, volume, movement, the relationships between objects in space.
So like the difference between reading about a bustling marketplace and actually being there.
Yeah, exactly. You're not just processing words on a page, you're navigating a complex, dynamic, 3-dimensional environment. And that's the kind of leap we're talking about with spatial intelligence.
Okay, yeah, I get it. It's like, language is like looking at a blueprint, and then spatial intelligence is like actually like walking through the building.
Exactly. And once you can do that, the possibilities, well, it's pretty mind-blowing when you start to think about it.
So, okay, let's talk about that. Like, what can we actually do with spatial intelligence? What are the, concrete applications?
Well, one of the most exciting, I think, is something they call virtual world generation. So, instead of just having static images or, even videos, which are still just 2D, we're talking about creating fully interactive 3D worlds. Like, imagine a world where designing an immersive experience for a game or, for education or for, I don't know, anything is as easy as writing a story.
So instead of kids just, reading about ancient Rome in a textbook,
right,
they could walk the streets and, interact with people, experience it firsthand.
Exactly. And it's not just limited to education, right? Think about the implications for architecture, for product design, for medical training, anything where you need to understand space.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. It's it really is opening a portal to almost infinite possibilities.
It really is.
But what about the real world? How does spatial intelligence kind of bridge that gap between the digital and the physical?
Well, that's where augmented reality comes in. AR, imagine wearing a pair of glasses that can seamlessly blend digital content with your actual real world surroundings.
So instead of everyone like staring at their phones all the time,
Right. Which is, let's be honest, what we all do
which is what we do.
all day.
We could have information just like layered on top of our world.
Exactly. It's like having the entire internet, like literally at your fingertips.
That sounds, I mean, that sounds amazing, but also kind of overwhelming.
Well, it's early days, but Lai and Johnson, they truly believe that AR has the potential to completely change how we interact with technology. Like, they envision a future where our AR devices, they basically become our operating system, seamlessly integrating information from both the physical and digital realms.
So it almost sounds like what some people are calling like spatial computing.
Exactly. It's like
Yeah.
the natural evolution beyond, smartphones and tablets. And speaking of things evolving, we can't forget about robots.
Right. Robots. Yeah, it seems like they would need a pretty good understanding of spatial intelligence to, not run into walls and stuff.
Exactly. For robots to actually be useful in our world, to navigate our homes, to
Yeah.
work alongside us, they need more than just like basic object recognition.
Yeah.
They need that depth understanding of their surroundings, the ability to perceive and interact with the physical world, in real time.
So spatial intelligence isn't just about like cool virtual worlds and fancy AR glasses.
Yeah.
It's also the key to like unlocking the true potential of robotics.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about all this amazing potential, right? Like virtual worlds, augmented reality, robots that can actually like understand our world.
Yeah, it's really exciting stuff.
But, actually creating that future,
Yeah.
like building a technology to make all of that happen.
Yeah.
It's going to be incredibly complex.
Yeah, it is. And that's why World Labs, they're approaching this a little differently. They describe themselves as like a deep tech company. And what they're really focused on is like building the foundation for like an entirely new field, basically.
So not just like one product, but like the actual building blocks.
Right.
That then, other people could come in and use to build those like mind-blowing applications.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they're building, not even the spaceship, but like the tools to
Oh.
build spaceships,
Forgot
right?
about that.
That can then go out and like explore all these different,
Different corners of the spatial intelligence, like
Exactly.
galaxy.
That's a good way to put it.
And you need people from all different disciplines to build a spaceship.
Totally. Yeah.
It seems like you'd need the same thing for spatial intelligence.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's this really interesting fusion of like AI and, computer graphics and 3D modeling and like all these different things have to come together. And they've built a really, really impressive team.
Yeah, I was going to say, they've got some...
Yeah, obviously you've got Fei-Fei Li, who's, a giant in AI.
Yeah.
And then you have Justin Johnson, who, like, he's been thinking about this stuff, like spatial intelligence, for it seems like years.
Yeah.
But then in addition to them, they brought in two other really, really big names in the world of, like, computer graphics and 3D modeling. Ben Mildenhall,
Okay, now,
Christoph Schleichter.
those are some names.
Yeah, these guys.
I mean, Ben Mildenhall, he's like the Nerf guy, right?
Yeah.
Like he created that whole technique, which is just incredible. This idea that you can take like a 2D image
Yes.
and like extract all this 3D information from it.
It's amazing. Right.
It's amazing.
And it really, I think, changed how people think about like what you can actually pull out of, even just a single image.
And then you have Christoph Schleichter, who he's known for pushing the boundaries of 3D modeling with this technique called Gaussian splatting, which sounds very complicated, but basically
It does sound complicated.
it lets you like paint with 3D points of light and create these like crazy detailed and efficient 3D representations.
Okay, so it is complicated,
A little bit, yeah.
but really cool.
But really cool, yeah.
So they've got this incredible team. They're working on this incredibly complex problem.
Yeah, it's a big challenge.
But, and we talked about this idea of North Stars that Ili talks about, which I love, but you never actually reach a North Star, right?
Right.
Like, it's about the journey.
It guides you.
Yeah. So how do they measure their progress? How do they know if they're succeeding?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I think for Lynn, a big part of it is about seeing the real world impact. It's one thing to publish research papers
Right.
and create, cool demos and stuff.
Sure. But for her, it's about like, are people actually using this? Like, are these algorithms actually being used to create things in the world that wouldn't have been possible before?
So like really leaving a mark on the world.
Exactly. And for Johnson, I think for him, it really is about the journey, like you said. It's about, he describes spatial intelligence as this vast, uncharted territory, and the pursuit of it, it's almost like a way to better understand the universe itself in all of its, like, four-dimensional glory.
That's beautiful.
It's really about, like, pushing the boundaries of what's possible and seeing where the journey takes you.
So they're not just building a company, they're like launching an expedition into the unknown,
Yeah.
which is honestly, that's what makes this so exciting.
Absolutely.
Because if this is true, what they're saying, if spatial intelligence really is like the next frontier in AI, which I think it
I think
is,
so too.
it really makes you wonder, how is this going to show up in our lives? Like, what are we going to be able to do? What kind of worlds are we going to be able to create?
It's going to be interesting to see.
It really is. So I guess to our listeners, buckle up because it's going to be a wild ride. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into spatial intelligence.
Yeah, thanks for having me.